So I have the tough act, of course, of following lunch. So you might be a little drowsy and whatnot, but I'll talk really loud to make sure that everybody stays awake. And I do, since my talk is going to be focused kind of on innovation and thinking outside the box, I do have to acknowledge the event organizer, Sophie, and anyone else who may have decided to BYOB and bring their own beverage into this talk. So my hat's off to you, the innovators. Guys, this is I've only been to this campus once before. I'm from Wisconsin, and I must say it's a beautiful campus. And I've got a little observation I'd like to share with you too. I took a little journey into the men's bathroom, and who knew, guys, that they have private bubblers in there. And for any of you guys who aren't from Wisconsin, bubblers is another word for drinking fountain. So what's kind of unusual about this is that they've got like these half walls, like they're partitioned, right? So it's like if people, I guess, are feeling insecure and kind of shy about, I don't want to see how somebody else views me while I'm drinking water, And what's bizarre about it, guys, is that they don't work. So and you won't find them in the women's bathroom either.
We're drinking water.
Oh, what, really? It's kind of embarrassing. And I want to say that there's also, I've got some bad news. John Eicher pretty much stole my whole presentation, so sorry guys. That's it. We're gonna have to leave. But I do want to acknowledge just this conference and the initiative that you guys have all taken, being college students, to come out here and basically further your education, to seek something more than just the obvious and what's been kind of given to you. This is a testament that despite these harsh and unfavorable conditions that we have, that is proof that if you want it bad enough, that you can make it happen. So thank you guys. And I just want to open this up and kind of introduce this talk to say that within sustainable agriculture, we have all these different niches, grazing, produce, pastured, poultry, pork, all these different things, and those are all amazing skills and things that are absolutely necessary that we always strive to become as good of a sustainable farmer as we can be to become a better producer. But part of that, and what I'm going to focus on, is the mindset and the idea of entrepreneurialism and innovation. And guys, I want to ask you a question. Do any of you guys know what free enterprise is? According to Oliver DeMille, who is the founder of George Wythe University, and I want to just kind of go off on a side note quick. George Wythe, well, let me ask, does anybody know who George Wythe is? Okay, I didn't either until about 6 months ago. George Wythe was America's first law professor. He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, and he was a mentor for Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and several of the other founders of our country. So the guy was a visionary. He was a game changer. And speaking of mentor, do you guys know what a mentor is? And I'm not talking about like that mythical creature, like half cow, half person with the horns. Do you guys know what that is? Okay. And how it's been defined to me, it's someone who aspires you to greatness, and that's in any area of your life. It's someone who sometimes, guys, they see more in you than you see in yourself. And these can be people that you know personally, they have personal interactions with, or they can be leaders in areas that you're passionate about. So in sustainable agriculture, a couple of people that I would consider to be mentors. I don't know them personally. I've had conversations with someone, but Joe Salatin, for example, and Will Allen with Growing Power down in Milwaukee. These guys are really pioneers, and they're innovating, and they're really catching a lot of attention. And personally, a mentor of mine I consider would be my business partner, Andy, as well. I've really learned a lot from him. So, do you guys have mentors? Does anybody mind sharing, like, a mentor for them personally?
I don't know. I have a older guy who taught me how to build a canoe. He's like 75, and totally a mentor. Makes you like, I'm really bad with details, so that's one way. It's just like he sees everything I don't see. You know what I mean?
That's cool, man. That's really cool.
I studied ecology, and one of my old ecology teachers, when I was a sophomore undergrad, lot about certain statistical models, and he's talking a lot about fieldwork, and really digging in. There's been like these issues with some of the, it's made a lot of time for me, and
Sure.
It's kind of a mutualistic relationship. So I see it.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing, guys. And if you're from Madison, then I mean, shame on you if you don't know who Aldo Leopold is. The father of ecology. For anybody interested in sustainability, period, whether it's in agriculture or any other business, I recommend Sand County Almanac. The guy was he was a visionary. He was able to, he saw things 50, 60 years ago and more now that that we're just understanding today. And if we would have listened, it's always like, oh, if I would have just done this or that, things would be so much different. Well, let's not focus on the regrets here, but I do highly recommend reading his work. So, all right, let's jump into free enterprise, and I feel like the best way to describe free enterprise is by kind of showing what to start. I believe it's showing what it isn't. And currently, we're in a capitalistic society. And does anybody have a clear, concise definition of capitalism that they would mind sharing?
Maximum profits.
Bingo, and that's basically, that sums that up. And like across the board, though, there's no specific uniform definition of what that is, but that's the gist of it. The law gives essentially the licensing and the favorability to a few over the freedom and prosperity of all. So that is not an even playing field right there. And there is no, it puts, as in our society today, it puts wealth as the highest standard. So that means sustainability falls to the wayside. That means things like freedom, liberty, prosperity, quality of life, those things don't matter in context of that most important ideal of wealth. And that's also where this idea of too big to fail comes in. It doesn't matter if what you're doing is valuable or if it's doing any good for anybody. You have enough power, you have enough favor from government, from other entities, that you're always going to be there. So free enterprise is basically, that treats everyone the same. The law is the same for everyone. So innovation, it really incentivizes. I don't like the word, actually, in a capitalistic society, you see words like subsidies, you hear things like bailouts, you hear things like, being dependent upon that, whereas free enterprise, it's incentivizing the right kind of values. So it incentivizes freedom, it incentivizes liberty, it incentivizes prosperity and sustainability, which is, of course, why we're all here. So what does free enterprise have to do with sustainable agriculture? Guys, we started around the turn of the 1900s. We adopted the industrial model. It was the Industrial Revolution. So as John Eckert really pointed out, was just everything is mass produced. We wanted to make everything as uniform as possible, produce it as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible, and make as much money as possible. The focus was on yield, 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 yield. Now, for some things that was okay, and we did see some advancement. I mean, so things like shoes, that's good to have. A lot more. It made things more available to the masses. Computers, that's great to be able to mass produce some of these computers. However, with agriculture, when you put that mass production model on top of that, again, as John pointed out, that if that was really the answer, then why do we have so many problems that we have today? How's that working for us? And unfortunately, it's not. In that model, it focuses on just yield. How much can I produce? How much crop can I produce for as little as possible? There's no talk about quality. As far as education goes, which education is an important piece of this, so as I talk through past, present, and then future, it will be about the agricultural system, it'll be about our education, and about entrepreneurialism, which, farmers are entrepreneurs. And that goes with any other entrepreneurial endeavors as well. So the education system in the past, during this industrial revolution, it shifted. It used to be education in our country, it used to be about leadership training, it used to be done differently. It used to be about basically teaching people how to think instead of what to think in a given field. So we shifted from that because we had industrialization. We had all these big companies, these manufacturers, all this come in, and there were a lot of jobs. So people went and worked for someone else. They were dependent upon that business, that entity for their overall well-being. And then, so as a result, entrepreneurism also declined. Right before the Civil War started, entrepreneurialism in this country was at 90%. 90% of people had some sort of ownership, and I'll get to in the present kind of where that's at today. But with industrialization, that was a huge shift. And then in the present, agriculture currently, we're at a crossroads here. Currently we have a system, and again, you guys, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir on this one, and John Eichert mentioned it as well. But yeah, we have a system that is focused on commodities, focused on cheap, really corn and oil is what it boils down to. I mean, that's Michael Pollan does a great job illustrating that in Omnivore's Dilemma. In corn, implying all the commodity crops. But again, there's just these huge focuses on producing as much as possible, and they're never in there is there the idea of is what we're producing good, is this quality, and is this right? And to kind of illustrate that too, I mean, the emphasis there has been put on, we have the cheapest, it's literally a bragging point right now in our country for, quote, experts to say, oh, we have the cheapest food system in the world. Again, if cheap was such an amazing aspiration, something we should all aspire to, then again, why do we have so many problems? Why are we the sickest country in the developed world? Why do we continue to see such environmental degradation? And it's all based on that yield process. As far as that, and I have a story that I'd like to just illustrate that point. I was just at there was a farm bill hearing here in the Fox Valley area a couple months ago. It was put on by some representatives, Petri and Ribble, and they brought in a bunch of experts from the agriculture industry. There did happen to be a couple from Organic Valley and a couple organic representatives, but by and large it was more from the conventional mindset. And so several of them on several occasions were literally bragging and talking about how this idea that we have the cheapest food system in the world, that's awesome, and that's great, and that again, this model also looks to solve the world's problems by basically flooding everybody with these cheap crops that are devoid of sustenance and nutrition, and then putting, basically with that comes genetically modified organisms and patenting of life and all this stuff that is really just further complicating things. And solutions to a lot of our problems, guys, they're not that complicated. They're not easy, but they don't have to be complicated. As far as education goes, so let me ask you this. I mean, is education and a degree the same thing? What do you guys think? Awesome, yeah, you're absolutely right. And what I touched on today in the present, where most of our education system is, it's teaching us what to think in a given field. That's what a degree is. And whereas leadership education, which used to be done through how all the greats have ever learned throughout history, and how some private schools teach today, and a lot of the, quote, elites in this country have learned, is through mentors and classics. That's how all of our founders of this country learned. That's how they adopted. They went to the classic works. We didn't go to these dumbed down, watered down textbooks to learn about math, science, philosophy, and religion. You go to the source. And today it's painted like, oh, well, that's too complicated to learn. We can't possibly understand that. But that couldn't be any farther from the truth. So we're kind of force-fed this one-size-fits-all package. And when that happens, you're only trained. You're not trained how to think. You're trained what to think. So leadership education, it's not to the level of where it should be and where it used to be. And with that is, of course, entrepreneurialism. So how I said right before the Civil War, 90% of people in this country were owners. They were entrepreneurs. Right now, guys, it's less than 10%. So we've seen that big of a shift. And it's another point to illustrate kind of this education system. This lack of education is the idea of do you guys know what does 1 + 1 equal? And it's not a trick question. Yeah, 2. It's 2. But what is that? What assumption is there for 1 + 1 = 2? What does that assume? It assumes that 1 always equals 1. Correct? And so what Einstein said in this theory of relativity, and I just learned this and it blew my mind. And I was always, maybe you guys felt the same way unless you're a math whiz, but math, it's too complicated. All these theories and all this stuff from Einstein and the greats, Euclid and Pythagoras, I don't know, I don't care, I don't understand it, but this is, so when I heard this, it just blew my mind. His theory of relativity shows that it's like, nowhere in the real world, guys, does 1 ever equal 1. Does an apple ever equal an apple? Does my name is Ben, if someone else's name is Ben, we don't equal one another. So we built an entire math framework based on that assumption that 1 always equals 1 or 2 always equals 2. Now there's nothing wrong with that, but yet, I don't know about you guys, but I think the majority of had no idea that that's how that was built, and that there is, you know, this theory, and what Einstein said, it's not just this like woo-woo crazy, I can't understand it. Like, this has practical application in the real world, that it does work differently. And I think I've focused, you know, really I've kind of hit on a lot of the negatives, so from this point on, you know, I'm not going to talk about the negatives of education, of entrepreneurship, you know, of agriculture. I'm going to focus on the positives. So right now, in current day, as far as the sustainable agriculture goes, this conference, guys, is an example of the positives. This is people taking initiative to seek further education, to invest in themselves. Just the idea of investing, I've heard it framed in a way that I absolutely love, and that's kind of what's inspired me to do what I've done since I've left college, and that is investing in yourself. It's not investing in things that you don't have any control over or understand, or just doing it because everybody else says so. I mean, you know, it's like the old adage, well, you know, if someone else jumps off a bridge, are you going to do it too? So let's take that with investing then. So investing in yourself, that means find what you're passionate about, what your purpose is, as John has said, and go after that. You know, if you don't know, figure that out. Follow your passions, find other people in those fields, those mentors, and go find them. As far as education, so that's the education, that we are seeing that leadership training and being combined with the sustainable agriculture practices. One of the most inspiring things that I had seen recently was at the same hearing that I was telling you guys about with the Farm Bill here in the Valley. We had an absolute outpouring of sustainable farmers, young people from the community that showed up at this hearing, and you had these kind of lackluster, quote, experts and you know, conventional-minded people there who didn't have any passion, who didn't have any desire. They just focused on the negatives, and they focused on how can we have less regulation so we can send more of our crappy food to other countries who don't even want it. That's what their focus was. And yet there was this amazing outpouring of people who saw the world differently and who stood up. They didn't just sit there. They stood up and they said what they felt. And they said what they believed. They illustrated what was possible. And this conference is an example of that. The rapid growth of sustainable food in the organic sector, despite our tough economic times, that is all proof of the positives that we're seeing in this kind of tumultuous time. With entrepreneurship, there are the terms, have you guys heard of social entrepreneurs? I mean, I consider sustainable farmers to be social entrepreneurs. That's saying that you can both go out and do good in the world and you can be rewarded for it. And there's an idea, a concept that I really like within that too, I heard from a company called Invisible Children, who's trying to stop child soldiers and trafficking over in Africa. And they said they talk about a triple bottom line. And it's a win for the producer, it's a win for the consumer, and it's a win for the planet. We can do that. You can create a business, entrepreneurs, sustainable agriculture entrepreneurs. That is possible. So guys, this is you know, we reap what we sow here, and with this old kind of dead model, if we're not putting any care to the foundation or the soil and what we plant in it, the crops that we're harvesting, guys, they're going to have little to no sustenance. In the future, guys, I see that there are roots. The soils are primed for planting. It's a new planting season, and those roots are freedom and prosperity, and those roots are ours, guys. It's the youth here. It's people and people that have a new mindset. So that doesn't just mean it's the youth, but we're a big part of this, and that's why I'm so excited to be here. As far as sustainable agriculture goes, guys, I mean, I envision a world where sustainable agriculture, people that practice these entrepreneurs will see and have a high quality of life. You will be rewarded for it. People's values will have shifted. I mean, a big focus of this conference is just showing the quality of life and how quality of life used to be very superficial and material possession based. Now it is on relationships. It is on essentially your core, what is ethical. And those, I see that in this new world, and I see that being pushed forward by people such as yourselves. I also see in a more educated market, and so people, conscious end users, call them consumers, call them whatever you like, but people who want and ready to receive this and are those, they're very vocal about that, and they help spread the word. So as a producer, as a thought leader, we're going out and we're showing people what's possible. So in the idea of free enterprise, and how do you create free enterprise when we have a lot of these over-regulation and a lot of problems that we do, that comes from going out there and making it happen. That does come from being a leader and being somebody who goes for your passion regardless of the environment in which right now it is a tough environment. It's unfavorable conditions, but you say, I see the challenges, I see the difficulties, and I'm not going to see everything. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to fall on my face, but I'm going to pick myself back up, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to move forward. I'm going to do it anyways, despite what happens. I see entrepreneurism, guys, that we are focused where entrepreneurism within sustainable agriculture, this is no longer an alternative. It's not the alternative to conventional. Conventional is the alternative to sustainable. I really believe that can happen. If you guys heard of, we're all familiar with the term un-American, right? Like it's un-American to do this or it's un-American to do that. Nowhere else have I ever seen, and Oliver DeMille, the guy I mentioned earlier who founded Georgetown University, he said this, he's like, there's no such thing as un-Chinese, there's no such thing as un-South African, there's no such thing as on any other country. So we have these ideals, guys, that what makes us different and so unique from everybody else is that we really do hold certain values in very high regard, and those are values that we've gotten away from. So it's taking a look at the best of what has happened in the past, and that is a lot of philosophy and ethics and values. A lot of what our founders did, a lot of what our founders have worked to and strived to and saw has been totally misconstrued, and it couldn't be any farther from that today. But in that time, that 150 years, guys, where we had free enterprise, we were the wealthiest nation on the planet. We had people in general, the quality of life of people in our country, the citizens, was as good, if not better, than the royals throughout the entire rest of the history of human civilization. We had huge innovations, innovations in medicine and technology, and we ended slavery during that time too, guys. I like to use the example as far as education goes within this process, my vision for the future of education. I like to use Tiger Woods and what specifically his golf swing. Let's not think about his personal life here. So we all acknowledge that he's one of the world's most successful golfers, right? So what would you rather have? If you could have something right now, would you like to have his millions upon millions of dollars and his trophies, or would you like to have his swing? You'd want his swing, right? Because if you have his swing, you can go out and you can create that wealth for yourself. You can make that happen. If you have all of those other things, but you don't know how to make it, you're going to squander it and lose it. You guys ever heard lottery winners? Isn't there a huge lottery right now? $500 million in Wisconsin, or is that on a national level?
They say multi-state, but it's not quite national.
Okay, but have you guys ever heard that lottery winners? A lot of times, what happens when they win? Yeah, they just piss all the money away. Because why? The mindset. So education, what I see for the future is that we have an education system that is focused on those mentors and classics, that trains us in leadership, that gives us those abilities to go out and be entrepreneurs, be difference makers. And guys, entrepreneurs come in a lot of different forms, and there are intrapreneurs too, and they're essentially leaders. You do not have to own your own business to be in this, but if you're in and part of a business, you're a difference maker. That you have that independence and that freedom, and you have control over, you have that responsibility where your livelihood is not dependent upon someone else, such as that corporation, these quote experts, or the government. You're going out and you're making that, you're creating value. So the future, we teach people, or people from communities. So it starts in the family, then it goes to the community, then to the state, the region, country, etc. So with sustainable agriculture, that's how we will feed the world, guys. Everybody, the families know what's best for them, the communities know what's best for them, and on the way down the lines. And they can grow foods that are more acclimated to their specific set of climate and geography. So if America is going to contribute, what I see as being an American is once you learn and take care of yourself and you figure out your purpose and you go and create, then you teach other people how to find their purpose. It's not saying, what I know, this is the right way. It's saying, let's teach you how to find and develop those skills so you can go out and create that. So how I would see our role is going to these other countries that are lacking in that education and leadership and teaching them how to do that and how to create it themselves. And in the future, guys, we'll be focusing on what is right and good before we ask what is legal and profitable. That's ethical. Those are morals, and that is something that a business can have, but it's something that we've been so lacking in. So, guys, what can you do right now? You can become a part of, and actually, I'll back it up. I mean, let's look at some examples. Right now, both what's going on currently and what I see in the future are more businesses like in this area, for instance, Riverview Gardens. Riverview Gardens is here in Appleton. It's they've just bought an old golf course, 70 acres. Within the city limits, they're converting it to urban agriculture and into a nature preserve. There's businesses like Trust Local Foods, which Sophie presented on at the time before here. There is businesses like Mountain Rose Herbs out in Oregon who trade and sell nothing but fair trade, beyond fair trade, organic spices and herbs. And they saw the limits of fair trade. They decided, well, how can we make a difference? How can we do things differently? So they decided to create their own set of beyond fair trade principles. So they go to a grower from any of these third world countries and they say, let's talk and say, what do you guys need for a price so you guys can make a living? Not going to a middleman, a distributor, a broker, and asking, oh, well, what do they need? No, you're empowering the producer. That's what's key. So, and in my business, Gourmet Grassfed, we're big believers in free enterprise, and that's how we founded our business. And if it makes sense, if it would be valuable after I finish, I'd be happy to talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to focus on the big picture right now. So as far as what we can do, guys, I mean, go out and find these businesses, find these people that are making these differences that inspire you. Work for them, mentor under them. Do internships. I mean, do whatever it takes. Educate yourselves. Educate yourselves in those areas of interest. Read. Just as far as, when I just talked about ecology, I mean, if you guys are at all interested in sustainability, pick up the book of San County Almanac and read that thing, and then find somebody else to talk about it with. That's powerful right there. I'd like to leave you guys with a quote here, and this is from one of the founders of Invisible Children again. Don't do what you think the world needs. Do what makes you come alive, and that's exactly what the world needs. And Thomas Jefferson, as Tom had pointed out too, was a visionary and a huge proponent of a country based around sustainable agriculture and small-scale producers. Thomas Jefferson's view on what a successful America would look like, it was small farmers, guys, that had enough land where they had economic self-sufficiency and personal independence. These farmers, these were the producers. He valued producers above all else as the most successful or the most important members of society. Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Never doubt, guys, that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you. Any questions?
Would you consider the concept of the sliding scale to fit in with free enterprise?
You got some details?
What is, for instance, like, say you're selling vegetables, but as like you're trying to convey the news of small business, versus like saying tomatoes are $3 a piece, pound, say anywhere from, instead of just naming a price like per pound, saying like $2 a pound up to $5 a pound based on what the consumer is willing to pay. Would you consider that free enterprise, or is that just more of a convenient capitalism?
Well, and I would consider it. I guess I'll answer this through what my own personal belief is through how I started my business. So, Gourmet Grassfed, we're in the business of creating healthy families and communities. We produce right now a physical product of grass-fed beef jerky. So we go directly to these small-scale sustainable farmers, and we sit down with them. We look at their practices, and we get on the same page. So we have a set of minimum standards that us and all of our farmers we work with agree to, and then we have a sliding scale based on if you guys meet and exceed this. So the minimum is grass-fed, is no antibiotics and hormones, is no pesticides and herbicides on the pasture, and all that. But if they're doing cow-calf, for instance, if they're not using artificial dewormers and things like that, we're incentivizing good practice through more monetary rewards. Now, is money the best way to incentivize something? No, absolutely not. But it sure does. We do have some materialism in all of us, and that sure opens people's eyes. So with that scale, we sit down though, and with the farmer, I kind of thought I don't understand why somewhere like Madison in Wisconsin, for instance, which is kind of one of the on the forefront for a community that really understands sustainability. They've been doing the whole local thing for a lot longer than here, the Fox Valley has. We're definitely behind compared to them. So a farmer down there, whether it's produce, grass-fed beef, anything, they're able to get more money for their products based on that market and what the market deems as valuable. Up here, the farmer, even if they have the same practices, even though they're doing it all organic, and they have the utmost integrity and ecological soundness, they might not get as much money because people don't necessarily understand the value. So I just challenged that, and I said, well, why is it that someone like that, don't they both deserve to be rewarded accordingly for what they're actually doing, not what somebody else thinks it deems is good enough? So what we're doing, and this business is less than a year old, so this is all trial by fire here, but we're paying all these, we're doing our best to sit down with the farmers and to understand ourselves of what is really sustainable, what are good stewardship practices, and paying accordingly. So whether you're producing down by Madison, if you're producing here, if you're producing in northern Wisconsin, if you're doing these things, you're going to get the same price, and it's going to be a price that is fair, that is something that you can make a living off of. So that's definitely tough. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
For the most part, also as a person who's trying to start a small business and doesn't want to name a clear-cut price, I'm just, it's difficult because you're starting a business and you're not. I'm not concerned about making a lot of profit, but I'm also concerned about making it a sustainable business for the future.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you, make it fair for the customer, but also make it practical for yourself?
Yeah, that's something that each one of us has to decide for ourselves. So yeah, we all grapple with that. But yeah, you have to just go with your gut and be confident in what you produce, because yeah, it's sustainable also means is your business sustaining itself? So are you making a living? And if you're pricing it to the point where you're not able to make a living, then no, that's not a good price. And the fortunate thing is starting, you can experiment around with that a little bit, and it won't be the end of the world.
I own we own a aquaponics company in Neenah, Wisconsin, and we don't consider ourselves. We haven't really toyed with this idea of free enterprise, but we consider ourselves social entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurs.
Sure.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around this whole free enterprise thing. It seems to me that you're responding to a market demand, which is people who value sustainable goods, which is the same thing that we're responding to. So, in my mind, that's capitalism. That's people want something. It represents the value of the people who want it, and they'll demand the price. Where you set your prices for buying, for example, you're the consumer in that sense, but we can't really say we can't demand this higher price. We're really only going to be demanding a price that the market will pay.
Well,
that seems like capitalism to me.
Well, as Oliver DeMille defined capitalism, which I agree with, it's it's giving favor to a few over freedom and prosperity of the others. So right now there isn't an even playing field. So conventional farmers, they can get subsidies, they can get insurance right now, and that's how it looks like it's going to shift. But those are just the details. So they're getting all these incentives, and then all this, essentially this subsidy, and they also have the agribusiness. They have this huge control, and they have basically are in bed with government to where they can do things and make things happen, and they can see less regulation. Or if there is regulation, they can insulate. Small business can. It's a small business right now. We face so much regulation, and not regular. In regulation, of course, it depends on what it is that you're regulating. But so for someone to go to a farmer's market, so your business, you guys had to be licensed in this state. If you guys are selling at a farmer's market, you may need a licensing to be licensed for something you've already got licensing for, just to sell in that county. Then again, in that city, you may need another license on top of that. So, and then you have to pay a farmer's market fee. So by the end of the day, how is that incentivizing any sort of opportunity and growth? So free enterprise then is incentivizing, it's giving everybody an equal opportunity. So that means that if the market isn't willing to pay something, it's not necessarily, I view it as a producer can go out and create a market. So if you're able to convey the value of what you have, you can sell your product for whatever you want. I know that maybe that sounds kind of hard to believe and unbelievable, but if people can see that value, if you can convey that and educate, that's the opportunity. So if you can't convey value in a free enterprise system, you're going to go out of business. So if this whole too big to fail thing, it's gone. You have to be able to give value to society. And so if society doesn't have those values, timing is a problem too. So right now we're seeing a shift. So we have an opportunity to have niche markets and to be able to make a living because enough people, sustainable agriculture, guys, is a very small percentage of the overall populace, but there's enough of it where you can make a living. So yeah, if you have ideas, a lot of things don't get off the ground because of timing as well. So if you have an idea that is kind of ahead of its time and you're not able to convince enough people of the value of what you do to make a living, yeah, that is one of those tough realities of life.
If I may, so what you described as capitalism, I wouldn't consider capitalism. I would consider that crony capitalism or fascism.
Sure.
So I guess basically, correct me if I'm wrong, you're redefining what capitalism is in my terms to free enterprise where people have it's open markets.
Yeah, and that's what I figured you were getting at. We're saying the same thing just with different words. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions?
I guess I'm still having difficulty with deciding or making the distinction between free enterprise and capitalism. I guess I always assumed that free enterprise was an integral part of capitalism, and I thought that the purpose of capitalism and why the United States as a nation adopted it was to foster entrepreneurship and innovation, and that's, you hear politicians throw that around all the time, but that's why we have capitalism, to encourage small businesses to exist and compete against one another to ensure that the consumers are getting the best product possible. So I've also heard that a way to grow the sustainable agriculture and slow food movement is through capitalism by expanding the demand for such products. So I guess what my question to you is capitalism, in your view, really the culprit here? Is it, or do you feel that the U.S. has perverted capitalism and so that it doesn't serve the people in the way that you think is just?
And so from what I understand of capitalism, my version of it is this corrupt system. So there could very well be, capitalism could be what I'm considering free enterprise, a true version of capitalism. I don't know. However, this new version, or what maybe capitalism is supposed to be, what I call free enterprise, and this is from what some thought leaders that I follow and that I read about and study, they're talking about free enterprise, and they described America, the first 150 years of America as free enterprise. Is creating that even playing field. So right now it's all competition, right? Well, competition is that failing model. Sustainable agriculture, guys, is really growing and taking steam because of cooperation, and that's a new concept too. Capitalism very much does focus on that competition, but by cooperating, let's say you have 2 farms that are doing CSAs, you're able to, like for the, let's look at the demand. Like this is a lot of times I'll hear people, businesses and farmers when I say, like kind of had that twinge of, oh, they're competing, they're going to take my market. But it's just like, if you think about in our valley, the Fox Valley from Green Bay to Fond du Lac, there's like over 1 million people. I mean, you can't tell me then that in one city, Oshkosh, where I'm from, which is like 70,000 people, that if one farmer has some customers there and then another farmer comes in and gets more CSA customers, I mean, are you kidding me? You think they're really competing with you? Why don't you cooperate, have cooperative marketing efforts, find out what you guys' niches are, because I guarantee both of your CSAs aren't identical, but if you're able to cooperate, share resources or time, and affect a larger audience, you're going to generate more business for each of your respective businesses. So all these ideas, that's what is my version from what I've learned, and what sounds good and feels good to me is calling it free enterprise.
I have a question more about like how, when you were starting out, like did you use pre-existing networks to go and try to get a hold of people to sell this to sell the beef jerky to, and then from that sort of thing, like what methods do you see from starting like a social entrepreneurship business? How do you do you work outside of the traditional ways of like getting your products into places, or do you go through sort of the farmers market networks?
Yeah, all of the above. You know, really the key is to find what you're comfortable with and what you're passionate about it, and to some extent diversify, but you don't want to diversify to the point of where you're spread so thin that you're not able to do anything great. So as far as how we sell, like I'm doing both traditional avenues, and when I say traditional, I'm going through natural food stores and co-ops, and then I'm also at farmers markets. We're also selling drop points, which are very much untraditional, almost like buying club status too, because those kind of non-traditional models are what's drawing the kind of people that are more interested in our product. That being said, we still have people. It's just like you know, how many people have ever said, "Oh, you're never going to meet anybody good at a bar." Like, you know, if you're single and you're looking for somebody, "Oh no, you'll never meet anybody good at a bar." Well, don't get me wrong. A bar isn't the first place that I go to meet somebody. But guess what? I consider myself to be a good person. I'm pretty sure other people, good people, go to bars. So just like a convenience store, we don't sell any convenience stores now, but think of the market there. You have other good people who are traveling on their own. That's one of the hardest times to eat good food is when you're traveling. So if you have a food, an item, and you can even, why not have local produce in local convenience stores? But everybody has to go to these places at one point or another. So that's the idea of, that takes more work, but it's changing the system. So, and I kind of like, I would love right now, and any help with this would be fantastic around the country, but what if insurance companies would incentivize healthy eating habits? So that would be, right now in Madison, for instance, there's 3 or 4 insurance companies that have partnered together that offer discounts on premiums for any of their customers who buy CSAs. There's a huge CSA coalition in the Madison area. It's like 20 or 30 farms. So those customers who get insurance from them, they have to pay less for premiums. So what if, like I've been toying around this idea of vouchers. So let's say people that shop at farmers markets, any of these farmers who agree to this voucher program, and you would have to have standards, of course, you could take someone who buys produce there could take that voucher to their insurance company, and if the insurance company is on board, they could incentivize healthy eating, which would of course incentivize sustainable agriculture. And so there is that can happen as well. But would I focus all my attention and effort on conventional markets? No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
What do you feel has been one of the biggest challenges making the switch from I kind of feel like capitalism is the American mentality now. So in a way, your thinking may be labeled as kind of un-American. How?
Sure.
Like, what's your biggest challenge been to kind of fight that and do what you do?
Fear, just being afraid. I mean, like that. We all feel fear, and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to change. So, yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's mindset. So changing our thinking. I mean, we can't expect to do the same thing over and over again and have different results. That's what the definition of insanity. So we can only get as far as our current model of thinking. So if we're not happy with the results we've had, it's time to change the thinking. So that's the hardest part, is to say, well, you know what, I'm going to come clean. I'm going to admit to myself that I'm not where I want to be. I haven't thought about these kind of things, or I've been very superficial, focused on the wrong things. I don't have healthy or quality relationships, whatever. Or if it's, I'm afraid that if I price this here, people aren't going to buy it, or or if I do this, like my friends are going to look at me like this. So it's just addressing that fear and tackling it and moving forward and creating that environment then that supports the positive beliefs.
Yeah, I had a question, and I was wondering if you could speak to the role of what debt plays in free enterprise, because you talked about education too, and I went to this school, and there's a lot of other people here from schools like Lawrence that, despite getting great education, you'll graduate with a lot of debt. And I was wondering your opinions on the role of debt in free enterprise. In my opinion, it seems like in some ways that can strangle you in a way that you need to work for someone else in order to get rid of that debt before you can actually go on and make your living in whatever you want to do. So.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's living within our means. So as far as education goes, does that mean that college is bad? Like if you have to take on some debt? No, absolutely not. But what is really important is to know, like, and I didn't know why. I didn't know why I was going to school. I just thought that to be successful, you have to go to school. So I did it, and then I went to a little bit of graduate school before realizing that no, this isn't working. And then and I'm like, wow, I realized how little I actually know. So when I did that, I unfortunately didn't have an understanding of how to utilize that. So if you're able to see, it's kind of like opportunity cost is how I've been heard it termed. So if you're going to incur those liabilities of taking out those loans, what's your plan for what you're going to get out of it? Or if you don't know, what's your plan to figure out how to do that? So then you can recoup that liability and you can put that into motion. So if you're able to get a quality leadership education, or if you're able to view your college experience, college isn't bad. There's a lot that's lacking, but right now we're also, I give everybody credit here because we are more innovative, because leadership education and the right kind of education isn't as easily available. I mean, the hope is, my vision is too, that our children and our children's children that's how they will be taught, and it starts with the family, but then when they go to schools, they'll get that kind of education. Right now, that's not there, so you have to work harder to get it. So yeah, is debt, is debt good? I mean, no, it's not good, but if you have an idea of, well, based on what I've learned here, this is what I'm going to go do and get out of it, no, it's certainly not a bad thing.
As a newer business, what's your idea of expansion within the framework of free enterprise?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm going to kind of address it from sustainability. So if that's not answering your question, just let me know. But so it would be, if it's growth on a sustainable manner, like Sophia said the previous presentation. It's slower. It takes a lot more time. So it's challenging right now. We have personally, our business has more than enough demand. We can't handle the amount of demand because of quality supply. I mean, there's a lot of grass-fed beef out there. We could go, for instance, to a meat packer on a state level, or we could go to one of the national ones who have jumped on board and said, oh, organic and grass-fed, we can get that now and we can offer it and we'll make more money. We could go to that, but we have no idea who those farmers are. We have no idea what they're doing, what their practices are. And is that easy? Absolutely. Would we be able to grow faster and make more money? Absolutely. But for me personally, is that right? No, it's not. So within free enterprise, that's something that we all have to decide. It's based on values. So what are your values? What kind of values, and those might not even be the popular values in society. A lot of them probably won't be. But that's the risk. That's the risk we take as an entrepreneur, is saying that this is what I stand for, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm going to go out and do. It may not, we may fail. You may not work, but I can tell you this. I mean, it will be satisfying, and we will grow from. I mean, that's what, John, you were saying. I mean, just the satisfaction and the growth, despite not having all the answers. And I'm young, so sometimes I like to think I do, but I don't. I don't have all the answers. But I'm just moving forward based on what I feel is my purpose. Does that help?
That's great. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to start setting up the next presentation and ask a few more questions. We have the next round that's going to start in 5 minutes, so just keep that in mind. But we can keep going. It seems like still a lot of people that want to have this.
Make one comment here for you to challenge. Why is it that you can't declare bankruptcy on student loans? Why is it that a giant corporation can go out and make a bad investment and then decide, we can't make any money on that investment, so we'll just declare bankruptcy and start over? Why is it you can't say, okay, I made a bad investment based on the information at that time, I don't want to do this with my life? Why is it the corporation has the right to start over, but you don't? I'm saying question that law. Begin to question why you're treated in such a way that you can't rethink what you want to do and start over again. And take the penalties that go with it.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think sometimes we're just so afraid because society says that you're a failure if you do something like that. But that's BS. So I mean, if that means a better quality of life and more hope and opportunity and a chance to do something different, absolutely. I mean, you can people that are so far in debt for whatever reasons, you always do have that option to consolidate, refinance it, to negotiate with those holders because they want some money. If it means the difference between them getting no money from you or some money at all, they're going to take some money and they are willing to negotiate. So that is a great point. Thanks, guys.